Very good evening. You know I love doing the programme, but I love this bit of the programme especially because it's just three great people every night. Let me introduce you to tonight's panellists. Tuesday night, by the way, we talk business, work and money. We welcome back Derek Blair from Pink & Blair Accountants. Welcome back to you.
Good evening.
What are you should be busy doing end-of-year accounts for late filers and such, and you're catching up with people.
It's only the final holdouts now, the sort of the bitter enders. But no, we're actually in good shape. We're 85% filed by Christmas, which is a record this year.
Very good.
We've actually done much better this year than
because everyone I know files late. I'm not late. They do lastminute.com.
Guilty.
Shandy Ekaboos from Virtue Brands. Is that you, lastminute.com?
I am one of those lastminute.com people, I must admit, yes. But it's great to be back, Roberto.
Welcome back. And thank
me.
you to Jonathan Davis. Always great to see Jonathan stepping in at the last minute for somebody who couldn't make it. Good to see you, Jonathan. Economist and presenter of the Booms and Bust podcast, which is doing great business, it seems. So
yeah, we've got quite a strong following on the podcast, which is really good.
So we'll delve deeper into your businesses throughout the course of the programme. Can we start with this story, panel? It's how to stay fresh in the world of business and I guess in the world of work. Guy Granger is the CEO for Europe, the Middle East and Africa for property and investment firm JLL, and they make quite a bit of money. He says he used to find himself getting complacent every 3, 4 or 5 years, and he's come up with a philosophy of getting a successor in place to re-energise him for the next challenge. He says to stay fresh, you really need to make yourself redundant every few years. Is that possible, Derek? Every few years, think that's enough, I'm going to go somewhere else?
It's possible for some people, I suppose. So we tend to act for some people who are serial entrepreneurs. They'll start a business and from the outset they'll do their exit planning immediately. They'll build it to sell straight away. Explicitly from the start, it's going to be a capital accumulation model. They're not really doing it just for the income. They're doing it to build an asset they can sell. And so it's not unusual to meet people who have built a business and sold it, and then will start a new business, probably in an allied industry, so they know it quite well, and they'll rebuild and they'll start again. So in some cases, people will sell the business and start again. But I do quite a lot of build-to-sell planning for first-time kind of entrepreneurs who want to build and have something saleable within, say, 5 years. And if you do plan it, that's 60 months of trying to make a difference to the business and working on the multiple that you'll achieve when you sell your business. That's quite a long time. You can do quite a lot of damage to the value of a business in 60 months.
I bet you can, but it applies to a few exceptional cases. It doesn't apply to everybody, clearly.
No, but what this also applies to most of us, though, who've got to reinvent ourselves at least. So in my world as an accountant, there's massive change going on in our marketplace. We've moved most of our clients now onto cloud accounting packages. So whereas people used to be on desktop things like Sage and QuickBooks, more than half our clients now are on Xero, a cloud-based package that came from New Zealand. We've had to relearn how to do bookkeeping and accountancy to keep up with this. And now people are using an accounts package as almost like a smartphone. They're bringing in a whole load of add-ons that support that basic package. So we're almost now IT support as well as accountants. Right. And the only way we've survived and we've managed to thrive in this world is by doing an awful lot of what we call CPD, continuous professional development. So in the last 3 years, all of my team have been on a massive CPD renewal exercise, almost relearning how to do accountancy so that we're at the forefront of this new digital transformation.
Ashanti, how to stay fresh in business and in the place of work? Because I guess if you work in the same place for a number of years, you can get complacent, bored.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I definitely agree with what Derek said in so much that, I think you have to be a certain type of individual to be able to pull this off, to make yourself redundant every 5 years. Certainly for someone like me, and I think quite a lot of other business owners out there, it's something that we're really in it for the long haul. So, sometimes businesses take a couple of years to get off the ground and for you to really see the benefits of your hard work. So, for me personally, I couldn't see myself making myself redundant every 5 years, purely because there's always something new to add. There's always something.
But how do you stay fresh? Because the danger is in whatever you're doing for a living. Of course, ultimately we work for a living. Whatever you're doing, there is a danger that you might just get bored and get trapped in one place.
Yeah, and I actually think, especially in the current climate where a lot of people are freelancers, they're working for themselves, you don't have that interaction that is making you expand your mind and learning new things. So I certainly agree again with Derek on the continual professional development, going on courses, going on seminars. I mean, I travel all over the world going to seminars just to expand, my horizons and learn more about what's happening in my industry.
Aren't seminars boring?
No, not my type of seminars.
Not the ones you give, obviously, but the ones, if you attend a seminar, they don't tend to be boring.
No, not if it's something that you're excited and passionate about. I mean, I went to a fantastic conference actually up in London a few weeks ago, and I came back with, pages and pages full of ideas of how else I can transform my business and how I can provide a better service for my clients. So,
Mr. Davis, how do you stay fresh?
Well, I'm very lucky. As the guy said, if you work at something that you're passionate about, then you never work another day for the rest of your life. I'm one of these strange people who is passionate about what's going on in the world, about economics, about financial markets. I'm passionate about trying to make my clients money. Trying to save them taxes, as you are, of course, Derek.
Legally. Of course.
Of course.
I want all my clients to pay more tax next year.
Well, hang on. Whoa. I mean, more tax. How's that work? There's a great tax story coming up, but more tax.
Well, tax is a function of profits, so I want my clients to make more profits, and I therefore want them to pay more tax.
And you would legally want to reduce the tax burden for high net worth individuals, Jonathan?
Yes, I would want to reduce the tax burden for everyone. As it happens, because that's the way you get strong economies, or it's certainly one of the ways. As to this Guy Granger, as a chief executive,
we'll come back to that story in a moment because he paid £500,000 a day.
Does he?
Well, his knighthood beckons him. I think straight away. Goodness me. We'll come back to that story if we can. Can we talk about food, and are we going to run out of food? Because some of the country's biggest food retailers have issued a stark warning about the impact of a no-deal Brexit. Sainsbury's, Asda and McDonald's are among those to sign a letter from the British Retail Consortium saying it would drive up the cost of food and reduce its availability and quality. Now, 90% of our fresh fruit, for example, is imported, and most fresh produce cannot stay fresh if it's on a lorry at Calais, Ashanti. But is there a risk here that we're going to run out of food after the 29th of March?
I mean, I know there's a story coming up that we'll be speaking about. I mean, this is just classic scaremongering once again. We're all going to run out of food and, we all need to go into panic mode. I mean, certainly a no-deal Brexit is clearly something that's on the table at the moment. None of us really know what that would look like, what the outcome would be, how that would have a trickle-down effect onto us. I actually watched a documentary a couple of days ago, and they spoke about 80% of antibiotics coming from the EU. That is more scary to me than this story here. But I don't know.
Do you think that post Brexit, because it will happen on 29th of March, give or take, of course, that if you go to if you go to the GP, he or she may say, I would prescribe you some antibiotics, but I haven't got any. Or you go to you go to Sainsbury's and they've got no courgettes on sale. So there was a courgette crisis 2 years or so ago where people were panic buying courgettes. So
personally, I don't like courgettes, so I'm not too bothered about the courgette.
Jonathan, are we going to run out of food?
No. Next question.
Are you sure about that? Hand on your heart.
Well, this is the Project Fear is the phrase that they use. It's a pack of lies. The idea that at 1 minute past midnight on the 29th of March 2019, something is going to change, affecting what is in your supermarket, your hypermarket. Absolute arrant nonsense. Why isn't Aldi and Tesco, why didn't they sign this? Because they know it's a pack of lies. The British Retail Consortium is partially funded by the European Union, and it's yet another elitist organisation which is trying to reverse the British people's instruction.
But aren't they referring, I think, in this story to the fact that if a lorry, for example, is carrying fresh produce, pick another, of tomatoes from Spain, if that lorry somehow gets blocked at Calais...
Yeah, it's not going to.
But if it does, for 2 or 3 days...
Well, why should it when the president?
Because the French don't like us.
Because the President Director General of the Port of Calais himself has written saying, we are fully prepared. And indeed, if they weren't, you've got Rotterdam and Zeebrugge, same organisation, and Santander. They're all fully prepared because they all want the business that the Brits give.
So no risk of no food?
Zero risk.
Derek Blair.
I disagree, I think that there will be some short-term turbulence. I mean, I suspect that if we're talking about 6 months' time, everything will have settled down. I think there will probably be some impact. It might be a small price change in some commodities, but I do think there'll be some disruption, particularly for perishable goods. But it's a sense.
Based on what? Why? On what basis?
On sentiment, if nothing else. It's just my sense of what's going to happen.
Businesses don't run on sentiment; they run on logistics, and they've got the logistics sorted.
But is this a conversation the British Retail Consortium needed to have with the government in private rather than in public? Because while we might all enjoy a bit of a conversation about this, there are people who are genuinely worried that come April the 1st, they go to the supermarket, for example, and there's no celery on sale.
Well, I think, at the end of the day, change is difficult for everyone. It doesn't matter what's changing. Change is difficult for people to adjust to. Brexit, regardless of what side of the fence you fall on, this is a huge change that's coming, and people, by their very nature, are going to be apprehensive, and you're going to be worried about food shortages. Am I going to be able to go see my boyfriend who lives in France? Whatever your personal relationship is. It's one of those things. This is why we're still talking about every single day. It's the hottest topic, purely because we don't know.
Jonathan?
We don't know.
Why are people worried? They're worried because, not necessarily on the Drive Time show with Roberto Perrone, but the mainstream media all over the show is telling us, be worried. Well, and yet, as I say, for example, you've got the Director General of the Port of Calais saying there's not a problem. You've got the Chief Executive of the Port of Southampton, the biggest port in Britain, saying nothing to be worried about. If there wasn't a Project Fear out there, no one would be worried.
I will take some travel. Sorry to interrupt, Ajandi. I'll take some travel to come back. You want to text the programme 81333. Start your text 3CR. This message says, Rob, as long as there's nature and wildlife, I'll always eat. Who needs a Brexit boss? I'm not going to go to the countryside and start, culling animals to eat them. Who's going to do that? Derek, Ashanti and Jonathan with us tonight. Maff in Hanslope said, did you mention McDonald's, Rob, as one of those panic people? The same company that regularly advertises British or Irish. He said, okay, I accept the hard border issue for them, but hey-ho, it might help with the obesity crisis. So lack of food, but it's not going to happen, according to what is happening in the economy post-Brexit. You're the economist, right? You kind of predict this, not predict, but you look into this and plan ahead for your clients, as do you, Derek. What do you think's going to happen, Jonathan?
Exactly the same as I said all over the media in June of 2016, prior to the referendum. Nothing's going to change. We were told that if you vote Leave on the 24th of June, the United Kingdom economy is going to go to hell in the handcart. It didn't happen. Just if you vote, not if you actually Brexit, but if you vote. And not that I actually believe that we will Brexit on the 29th of March 2019, because we have a Leave population and Remain Parliament, which is quite disgusting, but there we go. But if we do happen to Brexit, nothing is going to change.
So I don't need to move my money from Coutts in London down to in Switzerland somewhere?
No, not at all. They say it's going to have a massive negative effect on the pound. Well, the pound isn't affected by our parliamentary status relationship with another superstate. It's the pound is related to how much the government is borrowing, our level of interest rates, and the reason why the pound has been weak for the last few years is because we've had the lowest interest rates in the G7 for the last several years.
Derek, what are you advising your clients to do with their money? Apart from, you should perhaps tell them to give it to me, but what should they be doing?
I'm an accountant rather than an independent financial advisor, so there's a sort of line that I draw.
Indeed.
In terms of, I advise companies on their growth plans, but I can't advise individuals on what to do with their own personal
Has anyone
money.
asked you, though?
Yes, and obviously I've given them the answer I've just given you.
Okay.
But
Shanti, where are you going to move your money? You going to keep it in the UK or move it to Switzerland or offshore to the Isle of Man?
I'm off to Switzerland.
All right. We were talking about the Brexit box earlier on this afternoon related to the food story that came up yesterday, the food scare story. And we spoke to this businessman, James Blake, who's launched a survival kit which costs 300 quid. And he's called it the Brexit box. He's sold about 700 so far in sort of couple of days, and this is a entrepreneurial spirit, of course. In this Brexit box, which has a shelf life of 25 years, there are 60 freeze-dried meals, 48 portions of meat, a water filter, and a fire-starting gel. He did admit on this programme, James, that actually if you bought all the items individually, they'd cost you less. But it's the convenience, Ashanti, that you can order it online and you'll be delivered a Brexit box, which you presumably put next to your doomsday bug box, because that never happened either.
And it's supposed to last
25 years.
25 years, so we can show our grandkids
Yes.
and let them know what we went through. Do you know what? I had a look at what was in this Brexit box, and I'm a vegetarian.
Oh,
so
sorry.
this is not going to cut it for me. So I think tomorrow I will make a Brexit box for vegetarians and a vegan option as well. It's going to be my new business plan.
Could Brexit be worse for vegetarians and vegans? Because we've got meat in this country, but vegetables and fruit we haven't got. We have to import them in.
Yeah, it's going to be awful.
Derek, is this guy an opportunist or a businessman finding a niche in the market and exploiting it?
I thought it showed brilliant enterprise. This is really about repackaging an existing product he clearly already deals with. So my understanding is that his business deals with dried food that can be supplied and used in things like natural disaster situations, international relief efforts. I think all he's doing here is he's repackaging some of those materials in a different shaped box. But when you asked where people are going to put this, I don't think they're going to put it in their cellar. I think they're going to put it on their coffee table.
It's just so ridiculous.
I
think this is a bit like wearing a badge saying "I voted Remain." I think that it's the same. It serves the same purpose.
Jonathan, what do you think of this guy? I mean, could it be that he's one of this entrepreneurial team of Brits who think, "Hang on, Brexit, yeah, let's take advantage of it"?
Did you get round to asking him if he drives a yellow Reliant Robin with Blake Enterprises on the side?
I think he drives a better car than a Reliant Robin.
I'm sure he does. Well,
I
agree with our colleagues here. I think it's the most fantastic business idea. It's hugely entrepreneurial. It's marketing of the highest order. And if there are idiots out there who are prepared to spend £300 on one of these boxes, well, good luck to the guy.
You're not a fan, then?
I'd also suggest that in 10 years' time, there's going to be a secondary market for these, and they're going to be worth more than 300 quid, I bet.
Like the Sinclair C5, it was rubbish.
So I don't give investment advice.
No.
But I am a collector of things. I collect things. I don't collect Brexit boxes yet, but there you go.
But what is in here is I mean, just not appetising at all.
But it's the box that's important.
It's the worst case scenario. It's branded Brexit box. Instant
I'd love to see the
freeze-dried
packaging.
food. It's like pot noodles, basically, for 25 years. Right, can we talk about the tax story that the Sunday Times ran with over the last few days? The Sunday Times publishes The Rich List, very successful publication, very big deal for them, and it's run it for about 25 years or so. They've now published a new list of the taxpayers, the biggest taxpayers in the UK. And it turns out that Stephen Rubin, who owns a majority stake in JD Sports, and his family are the UK's top taxpayers. Mr. Rubin and his family will pay an estimated £181.6 million in tax for the 2017-2018 financial year, which works out at nearly £500,000 a day. In terms of the UK's largest taxpayers, you have Baroness Howard de Walden and family, £44.1 million, going up to the Weston family. They own places like Selfridges, Ryvita, Primark. They pay £76 million. James Dyson and family, £127.8 million. A lot of controversy over his plan to move his headquarters to Singapore last week, but he's a big taxpayer. The lady behind the gambling company Bet365, a lot of stories recently about how much she earns. She paid £156 million, and Stephen Rubin and his family £500,000 a day. Derek, should a business and should wealthy individuals perhaps display a green tick somewhere to show they are fully fledged British taxpayers?
your kind of final question first, should they show a green tick? No. I firmly believe as an accountant that a taxpayer's affairs with HMRC should be private. So we might argue whether certain public figures ought to be under more scrutiny, but I think a private individual, just a private taxpayer, I think their affairs should remain private between them and
Stephen
HMRC.
Rubin and his family, they own JD Sports, and they're the owners of Pentland Group. And the Pentland Group make things, for example, like a certain brand of clothing, which I'm wearing this afternoon, for example. Right? And I'm thinking, if I walked into one of their shops, if they had a logo, something on the door saying, green tick, we pay full UK tax, I'd be more inclined to spend my money there.
Oh, no, I'm not disagreeing with if it's a voluntary concept, a little bit like other kind of trade standards but even so, how will someone audit whether they merit that green tick? Because HMRC aren't going to really
but I reckon £500,000 a day is pretty good.
No, I agree. And in fact, I suspect that in some of the cases, they're actually responsible for more tax generation than is listed here, because I'm not sure that this includes, for instance, the PAYE and NI that's generated.
No, this is their personal tax.
Yeah, and it's also not the VAT. So some of these businesses will be generating more tax for UK PLC than is listed here. But having said this, there is a key word here we've got to be careful about, which is the word estimated. These are all estimated tax bills, and I don't know anything about the affairs of any of these, but it is possible, obviously, to have complicated group structures, including offshore arrangements, so that you can reduce the overall tax burden. You're right,
but if you're paying £500,000 a day, I reckon you're doing pretty well. Ashanti, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting. With regards to the green tick mark to signify that you're paying your fair share of tax, I mean, it's almost a backdoor way of shaming the people that don't. So I agree. If this was something that was, required, much like the living wage employers, how they display, the fact that they are paying a living wage. Again, I would probably be more inclined, I'd feel more comfortable spending my money there. But if it should be mandatory, I'm not sure about that, because I do agree that... What
about Sir James Dyson? Because he's come in the last few weeks for an awful lot of flack, Jonathan, for moving his research, his future car production to Singapore, his head office to Singapore. He was flagged up as a Brexit poster boy. He's moving his company. And last week, people were claiming, I had people text me, I'm never going to buy a Dyson product again in my life. He paid £127.8 million.
Exactly. Why do you think he's going to Singapore? Because he's paying all those taxes, and he's fed up of paying all those taxes. It's nothing to do with Brexit. It's nothing to do with the EU. It's UK taxes that he's paying, and he's fed up of it. He finds that Singapore, being a free market, capitalist, low tax society and economy, his business can make more money for his shareholders and indeed for himself, and that is an excellent reason for leaving the country.
But that being the case, then, we don't want people like him to leave the country because we're losing a lot of money in taxation.
As I said right at the beginning of the show, I think everyone should pay less tax. Then we'll become more prosperous.
I'm sure we'll probably run this. In fact, we'll take some travel news and headlines. We'll come back. So there is this recurring theme in some elements of the financial world that you pay less tax, you raise. If you have a lower tax band or less taxes, you bring in more money. I'll take some time. We'll come back and we'll put the question to Derek, to Ashanti, and to Jonathan. If you want to text the programme, 81333, start your text 3. So if you want to talk about this Sunday Times list of the biggest taxpayers, the Beckhams, really, they pay a fortune in tax. And Derek Wright says these figures are estimated, but Stephen Rubin and his family pay £500,000 a year. Why hasn't he got a knighthood yet? Frequencies. With our panel tonight, we have Derek Blair from Pink and Blair Accountants. We have Jonathan Davis, economist and presenter of the Booms and Bust podcast, and Ashanti Akabusi from Virtue Brands. Before we go back to the tax story, Ashanti, just remind us what it is you do at Virtue Brands.
Yeah, so Virtue Brands is a boutique agency, and we specialise in public relations and social media. I myself have been working in digital media for 13 years, and I founded the company in 2010. And we work with corporates, businesses of all kinds, as well as individuals who are looking to increase their social media presence and work on their public relations.
What sort of clients do you have? May I ask?
Yeah, well, some clients are confidential, but we also do work with a lot of small businesses, lifestyle brands, so really a wide array of clients. But certainly if there's anyone listening who would be looking to increase their social media presence, by all means do get in touch.
Derek Blair, just give us the brief background of Pink Blair Accountants, because you're based still, I hope, in the very pretty part of Hemel Hempstead.
Yes, we're based in the Old Town in Hemel. David Pinkham and I escaped from a national firm 14 years ago. We're corporate refugees, and we now specialise in acting for other corporate refugees, and corporate refugees are people who are leaving voluntarily or otherwise large corporates to set up on their own. And that's our niche. Most of our clients fit that profile. Either they're just setting up now, or perhaps they set up 5 or 10 years ago and they're looking for an injection of ideas, fresh ideas into their business. And we offer what we call conversational accountancy to help people at that stage.
Okay. And Jonathan, well, an economist, kind of know what that is. You look after high net worth individuals. Well, the Booms and Busts podcast, you've been doing that for a couple of years. I mean, it's really great. You clearly enjoy it.
Oh, again, it's another of my passions, absolutely.
Okay, and in terms of your kind of clients, I know you wouldn't possibly disclose who they are. What sort of field, what sort of expertise can you offer them?
Well, the day-to-day of my life is looking at computer screens, finding out what's going on in the world and financial markets, and that distills down to investing money for clients to hopefully make them money.
Is there any country or continent which is doing really well at the moment? Because Australia always seems to be overcome any kind of obstacles with their economy.
Yeah, they've been calling Australia the lucky country because it hasn't had a recession for 25 years, but one is coming. Their house prices are down 5 or 10% over the last year. And they're thinking of raising interest rates, believe it or not. Brazil is doing exceptionally well, particularly because Bolsonaro, the new president, free marketer, has been elected. And the Brazilian stock market is looking to go to near all-time highs, and that'll be a fantastic place to continue investing in. Emerging markets generally, Russia, India, China. China's had a bad year, but it's coming up nicely, very nicely. So emerging markets, great place to invest.
And where does the UK fit into all this?
It's long been a slow grower. It has been hampered by EU Brussels regulations. We are psychologically free marketers, whereas Brussels and the rest of Europe are not free marketers. Germany is to some degree. So that's been hampering Britain. We've borrowed too much. We've kept interest rates too low. We're massively indebted. It is not a great country economically. If we Brexit, we've got a chance. If we don't, then we're toast.
Let's come back to the tax or the Sunday Times tax list, which they've put together. An interesting development, of course, of their rich list. Derek, Jonathan has this theory about paying, if we have less tax in the UK, we'd actually generate more money. Is that something you believe in?
In certain circumstances, yes. So I can't put a finger on where that tipping point is. I don't know mathematically. I suspect that it's different for each individual. But there are some wrinkles in the tax system that impact on our clients, for instance. So at various tax points, when someone earns more than 100,000 at the moment, there's a tax band between 100,000 and 123,000 where people actually pay 60% tax. Yeah, and then they go back down to 40% tax after that. So there's this barrier to people wanting to earn more and to benefit themselves and the economy. People will actually stop earning at 100,000. I have lots of people who basically say, well, I'm not going to earn beyond 100,000 because why am I going to pay this silly 60% rate? So there are wrinkles in the tax system at actually relatively low income levels, because someone who some of the executives I act for will reach 100,000, but then they're expected to kind of push on. But there's this tax band where you're going to get punished for it.
Can you explain why the British tax system is so complicated?
I'm not going to be an apologist for the tax system.
But it is complicated.
In terms of why,
it's wildly complicated.
Well, most of the tax breaks that are exploited by the disreputable kind of tax advisors started out as tax reliefs that the government was trying to give to encourage some sort of behaviour. It's just that behaviour's got skewed, and people have found loopholes to do things that the government didn't really intend. So a lot of what's happened is the government has issued has tried to manipulate behaviour by introducing a tax break, but then hasn't kind of monitored it, and it's got out of control. So it's a succession of tax breaks that are actually causing the confusion.
Ashanti, would lower taxes, simpler taxes, mean more revenue coming in for the Treasury, do you think?
Well, I'm actually fascinated by this conversation, because I am with Roberto in so much that I do find, the UK tax system incredibly difficult to wrap my head around. And as you said, there's so many loopholes, and you constantly hear about people taking advantage of these loopholes, and then you hear stories like Facebook only paying £4,000 in corporation tax or whatever it was that they did that one year. And so it's just a minefield, and so it's fascinating to listen to someone like Derek who... Yeah,
Jonathan, how would it work? So a simpler tax system, less tax bands, perhaps, is that how it work?
You could either have something like a flat tax, 15% tax on everyone, on all earnings. You could have something like that, take away all the reliefs, take away all the personal allowances, and it would be a one-page tax code. Instead, it's 20,000 pages or some nonsense like that. Or you could have a totally different taxation system, which was tried to be got through by a certain chap with the name of Winston Churchill. Unfortunately, he wasn't even able to get it through, and that is that you tax property. And, Ashanti talked about the likes of Facebook or whoever not paying fair taxes. I couldn't agree more. If you tax property, you can't get away from it, because you can see where the property is and you can tax it. And that, for me, is the fairest system. It's called a land value taxation. People in the UK would hate it, of course, unless, of course, you were a tenant. If you're a tenant, then the cost of housing would come down, and therefore half the population would do well, half the population would do badly, but it would be a fairer system.
Okay. This story, let me just throw this story in. It's from the Shadow Business Minister, Laura Pidcock, who apparently wants to introduce an excessive pay levy. She said a levy on the employers of those who earn £330,000 a year or more would raise £1.3 billion per annum. Well, can someone earn too much, Derek? I mean, this seems to be what Laura Pidcock, the Shadow Business Minister, is saying. £330,000 a year is too excessive.
Again, it's difficult to see where you pick a number from. I suppose it's $250,000. I guess my problem is probably about the quantum. I know what's being proposed here is a relatively small introduction, but this is what happens with a lot of taxes. So things like VAT start at a relatively innocuous amount. Before you know it, they're 20%. Now, at the moment, this is talking about 2.5% over 330,000, I believe, up to 500,000, and anything over that will be 5%. Now, those sound like relatively small numbers, but the problem is once you start a system like this, people are tempted to increase the numbers. And there is a tipping point. I talked about a tipping point earlier. Each individual has got a tipping point. They've got a tipping point where they lose their incentives to make more effort, or to build a business, or to employ people. So in my world, those corporate refugees, they've got a choice. They can either stay a lifestyle business and just employ themselves, or they can start taking on employees and grow a business. And the more barriers to growth that you create, and the more punishment for growth, I guess it's just a disincentive. We need an entrepreneurial country. We need people to keep starting enterprises. And having said that, I do believe in a progressive tax system, and I know Jonathan was talking about a flat rate. I do believe in a progressive tax system, but there's still a tipping point where it doesn't make sense to tax people.
Ashanti, this idea is to introduce an excessive pay levy. It's from the Shadow Business Minister, Laura Pidcock. So anything over a salary of £330,000 a year, you'd pay a certain levy to raise income for the state. It kind of ties into the tax story we were discussing earlier on. Yeah. But is a salary of £330,000 a year excessive if you're worth that money?
Well, so this is what I found interesting, because my understanding is that this came out of excessive FTSE 100 CEO pay. So the story was around what they call Fat Cat Friday. It was Fat Cat Friday this year, so it's the fourth day of the year where the average FTSE 100 CEO has already made more money in those 4 days than the average UK worker would make in for the entire year. So based on that, I can understand and recognise the importance of introducing pay ratios and making sure that there is more transparency around pay and fairer pay. But to slap a levy on businesses employing people and who are making over 330,000 a year, again, I agree with Derek in so much that it takes away that element of competitiveness, being able to offer competitive salaries to the top talent from across the globe.
I can't imagine you get paid that sort of money unless you're worth it.
Well, absolutely. But if you take away the incentive, or if you make it harder for businesses to be able to do this by adding extra fines to them, the incentive then goes away.
Jonathan, it does tie into our business, our tax story earlier on. This is from the Shadow Businessman thing. You kind of scoffed when I mentioned her name. What she suggests? What's she trying to do here? She's
trying to raise taxes. She's trying to simply tax the British people to kingdom come. It's just another socialist taxation. It starts at 330, then it'll go down to 250, then it'll go down to 150, and it won't be 2.5%, it'll be 5%. And they will tax and spend, tax and spend, tax and spend. It's an astonishing thing, but if you take that logically to the end, you get Venezuela. And in Venezuela, 90% of the population under a socialist regime are absolutely in poverty. They are literally starving. 90% of the population. We're talking about a country that has more oil reserves than any other country on the planet. We're talking about a country that 17 years ago was the most prosperous country in South America. 7 years of socialism, and this is what you get. And if you've got the vast amount of population in socialist countries trying to get rid of socialism, and you've got people in the West trying to bring in socialism. I don't get it.
But surely that kind of socialism is different to the kind of socialism that's being cited in this country.
No, it's exactly the same.
I thought I'd put the question in. You can text 81333. Start your text 3CR. Jonathan says this text, what do you mean we haven't gone to hell in a handcart? What's been happening in the last 2.5 years? This is normal what's been going on, eh? And another text here says, Jonathan, you say that Russia is a good country to invest in, but would you like to be a citizen in Russia with Putin in charge of our country?
Personally, I wouldn't, but it has phenomenal energy and natural resources. Iron ore, copper, oil, gas. It's a phenomenal country in which to invest if you're a private investor and you care about your retirement planning.
Okay. We'll take some travel. Just come back with Derek, with Ashanti and with Jonathan. We have Derek, we have Ashanti, and we have Jonathan with us this evening. A company run by Mike Ashley, the founder of Sports Direct, is facing a fine apparently after being 6 months late in filing its accounts. MASH Holdings was due to file its accounts on the 23rd of July 2018 and has not yet done so. This means the company, which holds its interest in Sports Direct in Newcastle United, could be fined £1,500 by Companies House. Derek, his spokespeople declined to comment. I don't think he's going to care about £1,500 fine, is he?
No. So you mentioned earlier about tax returns. I guess there are some people for whom the £100 fine doesn't really kind of feature either. So I've got 8 tax returns, 8 clients who haven't filed their tax returns yet. I think half of them will get over the line. The other half aren't particularly motivated by the £100 penalty. £1,500. It's just what it is. That's what the rules are. There's a formula for calculating it.
Okay. I don't think Mike should be too bothered about that.
But I do think that the country, the economy does require some transparency in reporting corporate performance. So I mentioned earlier that I think that people's personal tax affairs should be private and confidential between them and HMRC. But I do think that the economy, the credit economy, does require some transparency and some information to be filed at Companies House. And I suspect that something being hidden by not filing that information.
Okay. Does Mike Ashley get too bad a press because apparently, because we know the stories over the last couple of years about Mike Ashley and his particular business, but he's now reportedly considering making a bid for Patisserie Valerie, a move which would give him even greater control of that. Literally every time a business goes under on the high street, what's left of it, Ashanti, Mike Ashley is the only player who comes in and says, right, I'm going to try and do something with this. I mean, should he be knighted?
Well, I mean, so Mike Ashley, there's obviously, like you said, there's been a lot of negative press, certainly around 0-hour contracts and things like that. Should he be knighted? I don't know. I don't know.
But he's the only one that seems to come in, and what you can criticise his business, what he does with some of these retailers, but he's the only one that comes in and says, "I'm going to try and do something with." There's no one else.
Is that true?
Yeah, no one else bidding in. Well, not that we know of, anyway. Jonathan, what's your because he's got a big footprint locally in the three counties, of course. Mike Ashley lives in Berkhamsted, a big presence in Boxborough and Hertfordshire. Of course, he loves that Chinese restaurant in Hoddesdon. He's mulling over the Patisserie Valerie deal.
Well, he's a phenomenon, isn't he? I mean, it's almost unworldly that a chap can come from practically nowhere, and now he's a billionaire. He's at the forefront of business in the United Kingdom. As you say, he controls so much of our high street. It's astonishing. And then you see him in the gossip columns, swilling beer at Newcastle United that he also owns, or going to a casino. He just has a heck of a life. It's an amazing life he has. And of course, look at the employment, look at the jobs, look at the contribution to the economy.
But they're not real jobs, some might say.
Well, they might, and they're talking nonsense. They're real job. People are getting paid. People are living their lives as a result of the income opportunities that the likes of Mike Ashley bring. So yes, they deserve plaudits and awards.
Bring Ashanti back, and you've got that look on your face which tells me you're not happy.
Well, no. Look, I don't claim to be an expert on Mike Ashley and his businesses, but I'm not a fan of 0-hour contracts. I don't subscribe to them, and I don't think that a lot of the people who do have to take advantage of 0-hour contracts are forced into that because they don't have any other opportunity other than that. That's what's put on the table in front of them. So that's why I made the face that I made. Yeah.
Derek.
I mean, I actually agree with Jonathan. I think that he's a great engine for creating employment. My only gripe is actually the very pedantic point that he's missing his filing deadline at Companies House, and I think he should be meeting those minimum reporting obligations.
Panel, might this be a first world problem because the online store Naked Wines, whose parent company is Majestic from Watford, of course, will start to dispatch what they call the Garçon bottles of wine that are half the width of a normal bottle. And basically, this is so that if you order a wine online, a delivery person or a postman can deliver it through the letterbox. So
is it this serious?
It is this serious, Ashanti. They've designed these bottles of wine, which are a little bit thinner. Literally, they will fit in through a letterbox. So you can order a bottle or bottles of wine, and then someone can deliver it. And instead of leaving it next door, which you'll never see again, in the case of my neighbours, before they text, I'm only joking, and they can deliver a bottle of wine and slip it through your letterbox.
Oh, wow.
I mean, if you haven't got the time to go and get it yourself, for example, might you be a bit too desperate for a drop of wine in this case?
But then you might want to think about other things. I mean, I don't know about this. I didn't realise that the idea behind it was so that it could fit between your letterbox. Your letterbox. That's actually hilarious. What about if it smashes and the red wine goes all over your floor, your carpet?
And you've got shag pile, white shag pile. That would be a bit of a problem. Jonathan, if you haven't got the time to go and get it yourself, might you be a bit too desperate for wine if you're expecting Naked Wines to deliver these bottles of wine that will fit through your letterbox?
I think it's a tremendous idea. We got a voucher through the door last year from this company, or Majestic, which is the
parent company. Yes,
thank you. Which said spend £100 and you get £30 off. So great deal. So we went to our local Majestic, and I said, I want whatever it was, 20 of your cheapest bottles of wine. So I got up to 100 quid. They took 30 quid off. I got them for £70. And how many people really care about the label? What we want is a nice taste of a deep Barolo or a dry Rioja or a clear and fresh Chardonnay. We don't really care about how it comes, so long as it goes into a glass and we can sup it up with our fish or our meat.
There speaks an aficionado, of course.
Exactly.
Derek Blair. A first world problem, perhaps?
Yes. No, it is a so letterbox friendly wine. I think is more of a PR stunt. I mean, I think it was driving hits to the website of Naked Wines, and I suspect that they will sell more. There'll be more tangential sales than there will be actual sales of these single bottles delivered in this way. I know that the bottles are recycled and possibly the cardboard is, but it still doesn't seem very environmentally friendly to do it this way.
Might I just add that if someone wants to send a bottle of cognac to 3 Countries Ready for my attention, it doesn't have to be a slimmed down version because somebody will take a delivery of it full size.
Duly noted,
the case
Rob.
can be delivered through the door. Right, Condé Nast International is going to launch a new business-focused fashion title in an attempt to tap into the new sources of revenue. Now, it is a digital-only publication. Vogue Business is what they're going to call it. And what they're going to try and do is kind of do to the fashion business, not the sort of the fashion, what they wear, but the business of fashion, and try and make it sexy. But the question is, Ashanti, can business be sexy? Can they create a business publication that is like the Vogue, like the Cosmos, like it's glossy and glamorous? Can they make it sexy?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. To be honest, I'm surprised that it's taken this long. Of all the industries, I think fashion is the one that has really, really been impacted and has changed through digital media and social media. When I think about myself, if I go back even 10, 15 years, I did used to look at the glossy mags to consume and to get my fashion inspiration. Now I'll just go on Instagram. So it's not surprising to me that Condé Nast have shifted focus and are going to put out this digital publication. In addition, the fact that it is niche is certainly a trend that we're seeing at the moment in branding and marketing in general. There's a shift from targeting large groups of consumers to actually focusing on very specific small interest groups. So no, I think this is great. I'm just surprised it's taken them this long.
Jonathan, can they make business even more sexy than it is, in the way that perhaps fashion and sport and other industries have publications, whether they're print or online, that make them sexy? Can it be done with business?
I don't know if sexy is quite the right word. Can they use social media and an online presence in order to boost their profits? Without a shadow of a doubt. And sitting beside me is a lady who helps people to do exactly that. And when you've got the likes of the Kardashians or you know the type of people I'm talking about, when they've got 10 million followers. When I was watching a music program with my teenage girl the other day, and there was an 18-year-old singer on there. Never heard of him, of course. And he had 200 million YouTube views. Well, I nearly fell off my chair. I couldn't believe it. So clearly, there is a massive demand for this, but a company like Condé Nast really has to get it right, or else they'll fall flat in their face and they'll look like absolute dinosaurs.
Derek, can business be sexy?
Sexy. Business can be modern and forward-looking. It can be modernised. It can be digitalised in particular. So I think the key to this is the fact that they're going for a digital-only publication. So they're keeping the costs, the delivery costs, to nil. The production costs will be very low. But I agree with what everyone else has said around the idea that niche is good. And so, there might only be 10,000 people that want this, but provided the advertisers are targeting those 10,000 people, this is definitely a kind of viable business proposition.
Panel, we just ran out of time. Thank you so much to Ashanti Akabusi from Virtue Brands, Jonathan Davis, economist and presenter of the Booms and Bust podcast. It's a good listen, actually. And Derek Blair from Pink and Blair Accountants. They were good.